Hey everyone, my guest today is the award-winning actor, playwright, screenwriter, novelist, monologuist, and icon Eric Bogosian. We're here today to talk about so many things, but I just want to highlight that his play Humpty Dumpty is being revived at the Chain Theater in New York City. It's opening soon. We'll share more info about how anyone in the New York area can see it soon. But the idea that the person who wrote and starred in talk radio and is in Succession and Billions and Uncut Gems and Law and Order and his play Suburbia, which I love so much, and the Interview with the Vampire series, which people became obsessed with in the last couple of years. I just am so thrilled that you're here and so grateful. And thank you for being on the podcast today, Eric Bogosian.
Thank you.
I want to I want to sort of start by going backwards, and then we can kind of end up here today with yet another Bogosian play coming to New York. Um, People who are obsessed with you know that you grew up in Massachusetts, but can you talk a little, was it Watertown?
When I was little, that was Watertown, but I ended up in a town called Woburn. That's where
Okay.
I graduated high school. Yeah.
Why do you not have what people who watch films that take place in that area, there's a kind of accent that people are familiar with. Did you ever have more of a Boston accent?
I think some people can find it in my voice somewhere. A lot of what people think is a Boston accent, no one sounds like that in Boston, but the Matt Damon, whatever that, all those movies those guys did. But there are some people who sound like that. But generally speaking, I mean, the whole country has become sort of accentless. I think probably because we watch a lot of TV and we see a lot of other people talking with a more uniform speech pattern or something, I guess. Anyway,
But
that's
that was never something that you were either self-conscious about or going to theater school. Was it ever something that you like were conscious of, or it just wasn't a thing?
I've been trying to speak correctly for a long time, but then again, that doesn't necessarily serve me because when I do speak correctly with this voice of mine, then I start to sound like an announcer or something. So it's maybe better for me. I've just evolved into this sort of New York something downtown accent, I guess.
You evolved into who are you? Tell me
I
everything.
don't know. I honestly don't know. The there's been a Interview with the Vampire, the show that I'm on now, and that we'll
Mhm.
start shooting again in the summer, for the third season, has very strong fans that are very into the show, and they dig up things and they post them, and occasionally they show up in something that I'm looking at, and all of a sudden, boom, there I am. And I don't even know what it is I'm looking at. I don't know A, what chunk of a movie or a TV show this is. I don't remember it. And or B, when I was a lot younger, there you can cut it so that I look pretty good. And I'm like, I didn't know I looked like that. So I don't have a strong identity with my public persona. There's just me every day, and then there's this thing that's out there that's, I guess, and that's probably true for a lot of people. I mean, uh there's been a lot of noise this last week about Sam Rockwell's monologue on White Lotus, and he's a good friend of mine. And whatever people think about Sam Rockwell, on every manifestation of Sam Rockwell, that's not Sam Rockwell. I mean, Sam's just a person, just a nice.
Have you talked to him specifically about the global response to that
Actually, no,
monologue of sorts?
I reached out to him well, he's in Easter Island right now and shooting something. Um, and I just wrote him to say, hey, I thought that was great. And then it was before this tidal wave of things that came about. So he just said, thanks. We've worked on monologues together before. And so he's on my website, 100monologues.com. And he was doing a play one time, and he had me come by one day to just listen to what he was doing. Monologues are interesting to us because I think a lot of us downtown, a number of us really have deep roots in the theater, and you kind of have to know what you're doing when you're doing a monologue. So there's sort of a thing to it. And I was really happy to see what he was doing. I know a lot of people are basically reacting to the shock of what he's talking about, but the way he put it together, if you look at it from an acting point of view, it's really so strong. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about Sam, but
No, but I just want to add that also you can't talk about it without, I think part of, and then we'll move on to you. We'll have Sam let his episode happen later. Is Walter Goggins. I think it works brilliantly because we are Walter listening to it. And so the
yeah,
way Mike White and his DP shoot it with such simple, it's simple and elegant, but we are watching this person realize what they are listening to in real time, and we are that person, and Walter Goggins is equally actually hilarious in the scene, and so present for Sam in that exchange. And I just think it's fun when television just does something, that we're not used to seeing. And I'm glad you brought up 100monologues.com, because when I introduced Eric, and, novelist, and I mean, you are many things within the umbrella term of the entertainment industry. And I just want people to know that almost every actor you love and admire is available on 100monologues.com, which is a collection of monologues written by Eric. It's in a book that you can purchase, or you go to this website, and it's just extraordinary. The people there, and how different every piece is that you can watch. All right, so
can I just return to the thing about Walton? I
yeah,
don't know him personally, but listening, this is an important part of any actor's evolution, is learning how to listen. And because when you start out, you're so busy learning your own lines, and you're so busy making sure you're going to get it right, and you get kind
yeah.
of nervous and stuff. But you have to listen. And a lot of stars, big stars, don't listen. There's no listening going on. You can watch them, you can see they're not even paying any attention to the other person, not even looking at the other person. And one of my favorite moments in anything I've done was a reaction in the Film Talk Radio when Michael Wincott shows up, and he's just outrageous, and he shows up at the radio station, and my reactions, that's some of my favorite moments in that movie. Just want to say
Isn't
that.
it funny? Like, it really, you would think it would be a simple thing to do, but to be present enough and calm enough in a situation where there's so much going on. To your point, stars have one way of looking at it, and then as a newcomer, you're so terrified the whole time
A lot of it, yeah.
right, of not being the one to mess up, the like, you don't want to be the one that stops the machine in some way.
Well, there's all kinds of parts to that. I mean, one of the oddest things about uh, be, get, working your way up the ladder in the world of at least film and TV acting is being a day player. And you show up, let's say you show up on a TV series that's been running for years, and you're there for 1 day or 2 days to do a guest spot. And everybody knows each other, and everybody's having a great old time. And this is like your first job in 6 months, and you're shaking in your boots. So that's all part of it. Yeah, I mean, there are many levels to effective acting, and I'm always watching it. Unfortunately, when I watch film or TV, a lot of the time I'm watching my friends, and I'm fascinated by the way they put it together. And I mean, whether it's Julianne Nicholson, who I was with in on Law and Order years ago, and she's on Paradise right now, or whether it's Vincent D'Onofrio in the superhero TV show with the superheroes blind. And he also Law and Order. I mean, these guys just do. I love watching acting. I love acting. I love seeing what people are doing. And a lot of the things that are the most interesting things are the bad guy things, or that's where you get to do cool stuff, as opposed to being the big, wonderful hero. I think John Hamm, for existence, well, he was always a hero with clay feet when he was on Mad Men. But the thing is, I think he's way more comfortable being a character actor than being like, he just doesn't want to. I don't think he really cares about that being. Anyway, let's just sit here and gossip about actors for the for an hour.
Do you know
No,
what I love to
talk about
watch?
me. Let's talk about me.
I
Me.
love watching, I like watching background actors. That's my favorite thing. I like seeing how they are, what they're doing. I always
Yeah.
watch and go, that's somebody's kid too.
Well, in Law and Order, and when we were doing Law and Order CI,
Yeah.
which I did for 3 years, um, when we walk into the detectives arena, the offices, we're busy, me and Vincent and Katie Irby or whoever it is, Julianne. Um, but in the background are all these cops. Well, if you watch the shows very carefully, it's the same cops all the time. They're another set of detectives working on other cases. And
Right.
guys are always there. They've been there for years. They have
We're
more
on a
credits on
different
Law and
TV
Order
show.
than yeah. Yeah, right. On a different TV.
You're just doing, I want to go back. We talked about Watertown and then the other town you moved to. Can you just talk a little bit about who was in the house that you grew up in?
Who was in the house when I grew up? Well, I grew up in a house with my mom and dad, and my mom was a hairdresser. Well, she wasn't when I was little, but she went back to hairdressing and eventually put herself through school and became a teacher of hairdressing. You know, she was a teacher at colleges, and my dad was an accountant, and my sister, my only sister, Denise, uh, was my younger sister. So that there we were in very, very suburban uh, situation. You know, little cul-de-sac street, bicycles, going to public high school, that kind of thing. Very, very. Woburn, Mass is an aging, well, it was when I was growing up, an aging industrial town in New England. And it had its problems when I was growing up. Now, I guess it's anything near Boston is very expensive. And from my perspective, though I was very active in the theater when I was in high school, I didn't believe that anybody could make it from our little dumb town to actually working as a professional actor. I thought I was being honest with myself. People would say, "Oh, you should go and do." And I was like, "No, I shouldn't. I got to go find a job. I got to go work. I got to make money." So
But then you end up in Chicago and then you're at Oberlin where were you there before or after like Julie Taymor and Bill Irwin and that group? Is that your
Julie and Bill were the year before me, and they
okay,
were there studying under a guy named Herb Blau, who was the head of the department, and he was pushing for all kinds of experimentation. And that's what happened with both of them. Bill went off and studied clowning at I think Ringling Brothers, and that was nobody did that in those days. The idea that a serious actor would do that was ridiculous. And of course, he perfected this physical performing that he does, and he's a regular actor as well. He's also on 100monologues.com. And Julie went to, I think, Bali or something and studied puppet theater. And then she, of course, created Lion King. But they were the older guys. I never was there when they were there. And
okay.
they eventually got rid of the whole department. And so I was the only person who graduated in 1976 from the theater department. There was none. I had a theater degree from a school that didn't have a theater department anymore in 1976. I didn't do, when I was going to college as a young actor, now I was saying, okay, I'm going to try and be a professional actor. We did no scene study. No, never. I never did scene study. I never did anything that actors are supposed to learn. We did a lot of rolling on the floor and rolling our shoulders and breathing, very good at breathing, and learning about all kinds of experimental things, including in the visual arts department, which I was fascinated by. So when I left, I I wasn't really prepared to be a professional actor. And when I came to New York, in brief, I ended up giving up again and ending up at a place that was very interesting called the Kitchen. And working at the Kitchen became, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but I would be right there at the center of all kinds of amazing stuff that was going on downtown. And those are my longtime friends. Those are the people that I grew up with, and a lot of them are not theater. Most of them are not theater people. And like I think on the wall behind me there's a Robert Longo on the wall, and Cindy Sherman, or the guys who put together Sonic Youth, the band. It was a lot. It was a really, really fun time, and we were just out all the time doing stuff. And then I started fooling around with, I guess, offbeat theatrical things that I was putting together. And one of them was me playing a lot of different characters. And Joe Papp heard about it, and I ended up at the Public Theater, and I ended up in his office auditioning for him, and he started putting me on at the Public, and then everything changed.
Wait, was
Because,
that the Men Inside? Is that
yeah,
what was the Men
that's
Inside?
been inside 1982. Yeah.
Okay, the idea, so this is when, okay, I mean, Robert Longo, Cindy Sherman, for listeners who are either not from New York or not familiar with what Eric's talking about, if you Google the kitchen, it was like an epicenter of artists, dance and visual artists, painters, photographers. It was like an epicenter of creativity at a time where New York was unpolished in certain ways. And the idea that you happened into this community, just the happy accidents that happen in life that start us off in the company of such creative people. But can I just ask like a very like minutia question? You're coming from Oberlin. You've never lived in New York before. You're like, I'm imagining you off the bus, and I'm going to come to New York City, the epicenter of
It wasn't
crazy.
quite like that. I was a student intern in New York for one semester, so that's when I
Okay,
got introduced
that's
to
how
New
you got here.
York.
Okay, how does Eric Bogosian? I assume that's your real name,
No, my real name's Smith.
but your agents were like, "Can you come up with something more castable?" Um,
I did have an agent once very early on who said, if you just change your last name and fix your nose and straighten your hair, you might have a future in this business. And
that's it.
but my
Those three things,
grandmother was quite clear that I was not going to change my last name, and I didn't.
right? And
Um,
I'm so glad you didn't. Are you walking around Soho and you're like, oh, what's the kitchen? Like, how do you literally, is that where you were interning?
No, I was interning at a place called the Chelsea Theater. I actually lived in the theater. It's still there at 43rd Street and Ninth. And I was a theater intern. I sat next to the director. I took notes. I made coffee. The group of actors that I made coffee for are still around. Dale Souls, who had been in Hair, I worshipped her, the ground she was. She's still in Broadway shows to this day. Brent Spiner was Data on Star Trek, I guess it was, for a long time. He was a young actor. I worshiped the ground. He walked on because he was so young. David Selby had been the star of a TV show called Dark Shadows. So these actors were all in this play. And I was there to get them their coffee and so forth at this. It was a lot like the Public Theater. It was a nonprofit theater that had a lot of shows on Broadway. Great place for me to learn about the theater. And I watched them like a hawk. I went to a lot of shows, and I decided by the end of my time there that again, I said, there's no chance I can cut it in this business. And I went back to college, got my degree. And when I came back to New York, it was not to be as an actor. And it just happened that in the time of my internship, I had met the guy who was running the kitchen, a guy named Bob Stearns. And I sent him a note saying, can I intern at your place? And it so happened they were looking for an assistant. And I started working there in the fall of 76 for $100 a week, and did the best I could with that. I mean, in those days you could do that in New York. And yeah, and I watched all these. I went to a lot of theater when I was here in that fall of 75, which was the worst times of New York. That was when Ford to New York, Drop Dead, and all that stuff. And I wasn't really enjoying a lot of the theater I was going to see. I mean, here I was, just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I'm seeing everything. And I saw a play by Richard Foreman in Soho called Rhoda in Potato Land, and I thought it was amazing. Um, Richard just passed away recently, a brilliant director, and I became a big fan of his work. And the idea that you could do a kind of theater with a whole new set of rules, and that ended up I don't know. I wanted to embrace that scene, but I didn't know that I could really participate in it. So I just ended up working at the kitchen, answering the phone. And a lot of people came through there who were amazing, amazing. I ended up starting a dance program there. And I don't know. I mean, the thing about that time, the late 70s and the early 80s in Soho was that we were a community making work for each other, not really thinking too much about like what's the review in the New York Times going to say. And certainly there was no commercial aspect. I mean, there was a lot of performance art and conceptual art and video art and jazz music and new music, none of which seemed to be particularly commercial. It was just beyond anyone's imagination that it could be commercial. That would change by the early 80s. But at first it was just as Patti Smith said, we were just kids. We were just kids. We were very young. We were like 24 and we were just having a blast, maybe too good a blast, but yeah.
Well, you've been very open about what a blast you had, I mean,
So
you're at the epicenter of a New York Renaissance at the time, and then you create this form that many people continue to, maybe create is not the right word. You found yourself really married to a form that suited you, which is the one man show. It was like this beautiful marriage. I don't know if you always knew you had that talent as a writer to be able to come up with ways of expressing yourself through these voices, but you hit when you hit, I mean, Oliver Stone directs the movie version of it. I mean, you had such a like the dream of being discovered in this really authentic way, and then Hollywood comes and tries to do their version of it. Do you feel when you look back on it, like when I read about you, it feels like that happened very quickly once, I mean, the Times finds you, you're saying we were doing it for each other. You weren't concerned with reviews, but it turns out you got great reviews. Which propelled you forward in the world of commercial art. How did you, and you're open about like, and you're fooling around with drugs and having a great time while this is all happening, and clearly you're able to be very productive even though you're trying things that aren't healthy, as it were. um
it's true.
so so
I'm
and then
very fortunate that
yes.
at a moment when I was getting ready to be one more smudge on the streets of New York, because I was doing things. I mean, the scene was exciting and then it was decaying. And that was all happening in the early 80s. And for some people, it was this horrible plague that hit the gay community. But for me, it was the fact that I was an intravenous drug user, and I had married this wonderful woman that I was working with in 1980, Jo Bonnie, who is a director of note today. And her lifestyle was very different than mine. I mean, she explored, but she didn't get obsessed with all of this junk. And um, at first, it was hard to be married when I was still committed to being a ne'er-do-well. And then I think just being around her maybe got me a little bit cleared up. And then in 1984, I got real cleared up. I stopped drinking, I stopped drugging. So it's been 40 years, over 40 years. Um, I mean, I don't know what I'm saying exactly here. I do know that looking back on all of it, it's weird. It's like when I was in high school, I desperately wanted to lose my virginity, but I didn't know when a girl would take me home and we'd be all alone with them in her house, that what she wanted to do was have sex. And I would be like, oh, you have TV and we can just sit and watch TV all day. I was such a nerd. In some ways, that was what was happening for me I was super ambitious. I was so resentful of other people who were doing well. And at the same time, I didn't understand when things started to go my way. It didn't click. I didn't understand, and I still don't completely understand what happened. There was more again, I have no objectivity about this, but I do know that when I say we were a community, when I was making the work that I was making in around 80 is the time. It's also when I got married. I was thinking about my friends, and I was thinking about, how do I make these guys laugh? How do I keep people, when you've got people who are not theater people, but they're visual artists and so forth, they get bored with any kind of theatrical convention. They're much more, you got to keep their interest. And I was trying to figure out how to keep my friends' interest. And people were doing all kinds of strange stuff then, and things were popping out around that time, whether it was Whoopi Goldberg or Laurie Anderson or whatever it was. There was a lot of, wilder performance type things. And so I just was part of that. And I couldn't see myself. And it was many years later that, and this is just, I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now. This is not some canned thing that I think about, but many
I
years later, I started to understand, if I was hanging around, I would be introduced to somebody like Chris Walken or Lou Reed or somebody, and they would indicate, like, we got to hang out together sometime, man, with the notion that we're gonna, drink and party and everything. But by that point, after 1984, when I was becoming much more disciplined, I couldn't do any of those kind of things. And I always wondered, why do these guys, Harvey Keitel, why do these guys think that I'm that kind of person? And one day I saw a video of one of my shows, and I suddenly realized that's why they think I'm like that, because behind all these characters, there's this guy who is actually a character himself, which isn't me. I'm a complete nerd. And I'm actually playing a cool guy, and people are seeing these shows and they're thinking that I'm cool. And I'm like the last thing from cool. I don't even know how to explain this, because I don't know. I don't know. I was in that world. I was in that scene. I was doing all the things that I guess, sex, drugs, rock and roll. That was my life. But I never thought of myself that way. I just thought of myself as the nerd I was in high school. So
Do
I
you
don't know.
think do you think most people, like the list of people that are sort of the poster boys of a certain, I mean, you just said Lou Reed, Harvey Keitel, Chris Walken. I mean, the list goes on and on, but they really are like, if we went to the Smithsonian and they did an
The bad
exhibit on
boys. Yeah. Yeah.
those guys of a specific generation and peers of yours, even if some of them were older than you at the time, um, is that not true for everyone, or do you think there are people who really are that?
Oh, there are people who really are that. There's no question about that. I mean, look, half my friends are dead. So, I mean, that's definitely, they took it all the way. Um, but there are people, like, somebody was just on the phone with me yesterday, and they said, I'm going to be doing something with Abel Ferrara. The notion that Abel is still out there doing stuff is beyond me. I mean, this is a guy, he's the Keith Richards of directors. And these, some guys, they just have a capacity, or I don't know. I mean, we've lost some really great talents, really great talents. And actually, another side of the coin is, last night Joe and I decided to watch the first Iron Man movie. And of course, that's Robert Downey Jr., who he took it as far as you could take it. And the fact that he got sober and and was able to give us the gift of his tremendous talent
Yeah.
is, it's so wonderful. And I mean, thank God he made that turn before he went right off the cliff. And he almost did. I mean, he was in jail, for God's sakes. But there are plenty of people who don't make that turn. And yeah, that's the world that I'm around a lot of the time. I just never saw myself as that kind of person. And I don't think anybody who knows me thinks of me that's that kind of person. I'm kind of a more, I like to work. And for me, and not to keep beating this sobriety thing with to death, but that's one of the greatest gifts for me, is the ability to show up here in the morning at 10 a.m. and start working and writing things. And people ask me, are you writing something now? Are you still writing? It's like, I'm always writing. I'm always writing, and I love acting. That's my story. And again, not to, steer this conversation, but I am delighted that Chain is doing the play Humpty Dumpty. We did it 25 years ago. I love the play. I think it works. I love Chain. I love the people in Chain. And this, and also I don't write for, and very often my work will get done at like Williamstown or very far away. And that's not who I'm writing my plays for. I'm writing my plays for my friends here in the city. I'm writing it for you to come and see my play. And so I'm speaking our language. It's it's such an important part of what I think the arts are about, is about our community talking to ourselves. And sometimes that gets interrupted by, like high ticket prices, for example. Not everybody can go see Oh Mary, for instance, with Betty Gilpin. Well, Betty isn't in it anymore, but the
No,
but
now it's Titus Burgess.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody should see that. Everybody should see these things so we can talk about them, so we can say, I liked it or I didn't like it. My friends made this film, Honora. I mean, I'm very happy that movie came, but I want to be able to talk about it. In the case of movies, you do get that, but I'm not a movie guy. I'm a theater guy. So I want to be able to talk about all the things that are going on that are fun in the theater. Anyway, I'm sort of
Well, but you
this is the way
can,
my mind works. I'll just keep going on and
I
on.
love it. That is what this is the platform for minds like yours. It's the perfect match. Joe Papp was that person for a long time that gave so many artists an opportunity to do what they did really authentically without pressures of filling seats at expensive ticket prices. I feel like when you were there, it was the moment where like a chorus line was feeding money into the public theater where people like you could just
True.
be discovered and do this incredible work that was accessible for everybody. I mean, you really like it's just extraordinary looking at the chapters of your life. There's this thing people call luck, right? Like you write, like you could be really talented, but if there's no, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, right? Your tree did not fall in a forest where no one heard it. Like everyone got to hear it. And you have had a career for decades that was born out of that moment. It's just, I had dinner with Oliver Stone this summer, actually, who is a personality as well as a director. And I was just kind of hearkening back to like all of these people who were doing work that was incredibly impactful, right, in its day. And your movie is right up with those pieces of celluloid that last and live and have a legacy where you show us these personalities that I'm learning now have nothing to do with Eric Bogosian as he sees himself, but like these bigger than life, confident, sort of narcissist people with a lot to say. And it's just really wild to me to be sitting here with you right now because the other thing you've managed to do, which is rare, I'm going to assume you're still married. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't
45
want
years
to,
this year. Yeah.
okay. I didn't want to be presumptive. That was my understanding. You've also managed in all the chaos of show business to raise a family, what seems like a close-knit family. I saw one of your sons does like incredible graphic, comic book and has a whole other visual artist mind and way to create. But you and
Right.
Giovanni are one of the like iconic couples of the theater world. And and you work together a lot, separately and together. And so I guess I would love to hear a little bit about what it has been to have a partner in artistic collaboration and life and love, and it's lasting for so long. And it sounds like it started in a way that was a little bit rocky and it survived it.
Well, yeah, I could go on all day about Joe. Joe doesn't like me talking about her, so there's a limit to what I can say. I'm very lucky. And sometimes after dinner, if we're sitting and we're just talking about um, a play we've seen or what's going on in politics or whatever, I just feel so lucky that I get to share my life with this amazing person. We met when she was traveling through New York with a friend, and she had decided to make an animated film, and I was hired to do the voiceover on the film. And at the time, I was really in my cups, and I had girlfriends and stuff, and I was not looking at these people, these two women, as potential anything. And we did the thing, and I liked it, and I liked working with her, and I liked her. I mean, she had this wonderful vibe. Um, but but we were working, and then we ended up one afternoon being sort of stuck with each other while the other friend was with another guy, and we were basically on a blind date. It wasn't blind because we knew each other, but and we just, by the end of the afternoon, it was like, I can't let this woman leave my life. And we were married 2 months later. Um, and at first it was difficult because I'd never lived with anybody, and also I had a habit, and I was used to living by myself, and really, you know going out at midnight and coming back at 6 in the morning or something. It just wasn't the But she didn't care about that stuff. I mean, and then we got this amazing situation where things were very struggly for a few years, and I had to get this shit sorted out as far as my what I was doing on my free time, which was drinking and drugging. And then that was hard because once I got sober, I just felt like I wasn't even me anymore. But slowly things came into focus, and then they started coming to focus very quickly. And I was literally, from the time I stopped drinking to the time I was driving around in a stretch limo in Sunset Boulevard with talk radio, um, was only a couple of years. And also, we were poor. We were really, really poor. And all of a sudden we weren't really, really poor. And our life changed. And then we started to have kids. And anybody who's been through the thing of having kids, it's like a conveyor belt. There's all these things, no matter what your lifestyle is, it's going to be about the kids. I mean, unless you're a horrible parent, but you are going to be dealing with all these things, getting them up, bathing them, getting them to bed, getting them to school, all that junk. And it becomes sort of defining for what your life is about. Not to mention, you start to become friends with all the parents of the other kids, people you would never have anything to do with. And sorry, folks, but that's kind of the situation. They would feel the same way about me.
Right, right.
Yeah, and then it's sort of like, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, here we are, and the kids are in school all day, every day. And it was during that time that Joe made a change from being a graphic designer to directing, simply because she used to direct my stuff early on, and then she started moving out and directing other people and getting noted for it. And it's been fantastic. In fact, I mean, it was kind of funny after about sort of like year 15 or something, I would be at one of her play openings, and somebody would come up to me and go, she's such a wonderful director. And what do you do? Do you do something in the theater? And it'd be like, I was just chagrined because I had come off of a very hot period about 8 years earlier. That has all settled down now, and it's really, I mean, I just said to her yesterday, I mean, how lucky are we at 70 plus that we're both so damn busy? And sometimes we don't want to be as busy as we are, but she's got 4 projects going. I've got 4 projects going. And that's the way we like it. And we are very close with the kids. They both live in New York City, and now there's a grandkid and who's fantastic. And we get to have that amazing pleasure as well. I was going to
You
say that to the little known thing. You wanted me to say something that nobody knows about me. I guess I don't know what it is that nobody knows about me, but being a grandparent has been, it's wow. It's just amazing. We were with him all day yesterday. It's beautiful.
Eric, that's extraordinary. And just to kind of bring it back to, I don't know, what are the things that are really important, right? And sometimes it's just the simplicity of I mean, it changes everything. You have a grandchild.
Mm. Yeah,
Like,
it is. And yet there's a part of our life which Joe has been very this is sort of her thing is that you have to have your own life in order for your children to have, like they have to see you living. And so
Right.
we don't, everything isn't about them and everything isn't even about the grandkid. But I am now that I'm spending more time acting over the last, I guess, 20 years now,
Yeah.
my sort of dream come true with, you mentioned some of the TV shows. There's been things going on with streaming, and I was very lucky to do Uncut Gems, and now I'm doing Interview with a Vampire. Um, I'm around a lot. I'm more aware of all my actor friends. I'm around more actors all the time. And acting has this weird thing in it where it keeps, if you become famous, celebrated actor, it changes your whole life. Like you can't, I know people who they can't walk down the street, and I want to walk down the street. I'm not saying I want to be this or I want to be that. Believe me, I'm happy when people recognize me or I get the attention for that sort of thing, but I don't need it to be like everything. But more than any of this, I just want to be busy. I just want to be working with other people. And I feel so fortunate that I get to do that. It's kind of hard to explain, but there is a sort of I came up in New York with a lot of visual artists, and the visual artists can be visual artists forever. I mean, until they croak, until they're like 95 years old. And
Right.
they're not recognizable, and they get to go to their studio and work every day. Likewise with writers, likewise with directors, likewise with pretty much everybody except for actors. And actors have this other thing. I guess musical stars as well. I mean, Taylor Swift lives down the street. She can't walk on the street. To be a riot. Um, so that odd thing, and what that does to your head when the way people treat you as a star is corrosive, I think, anyway. And it really, you got to ask yourself when you get into any of this stuff, why am I doing this, and where do I want this all to be, and what would be where do I want it to end up? Like, what would be the perfect manifestation of this? And fortunately, in the acting realm, I and Sam and a number of us uh, were around uh, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was very serious about this. Is like all this is everything. This is, you put everything you've got into it, and in that other part, that's not why you're doing it. You're not doing it so that you're going to make a lot of money, or people are going to ask for your autograph everywhere you go. You're going to put everything that you've got, because it tests you just like a person who's trying to climb Yosemite. You're being tested to the limits of your abilities. And I have to say, I have to put in a good word for Interview with the Vampire, because everybody on that show is doing that kind of work as well, which is why it's been such a satisfying show to be on uh,
Right.
currently. And here we are with Humpty Dumpty, which is, I mean, it's kind of like, do you want to know what's going to happen to you in 6 months from now, or are you kind of excited by the idea that you don't know? Well, I don't know what's going to happen when that show is running next month in April,
Right.
and that's exciting. That's fun. That's the thrill of it, right? Anyway,
Can I
another
just ask
monologue.
you,
Sorry.
as we, well, 100monologues.com, um, what is your relationship? And this is not easy to kind of streamline and answer into a couple of sentences, but what is your relationship to fame?
To fame.
Hmm.
Um, well, I'm in a really nice place, because I mean, if it there is something nice about somebody coming up to you in the street and saying, I really like your work. I mean, there's a lot of other ways that people come up to you. They don't necessarily say that. I mean, a lot of times they may just come up and say, do you know did anybody ever tell you remind them of Anthony Bourdain? And I mean, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Or where do I know you from? And there's that we, I've been around long enough that I am, this age of selfies just started, 10 years ago. And there was a time before that when people didn't want to do that. But as far as fame, I don't even completely understand it. I don't think I understand. Well, for me, it's relative. Okay. So if I'm on a red carpet at an opening of some big thing, they do everything they can to make you think you're the most important person in the world. Be like, Eric, 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 Eric. Oh, Eric. Oh man, it's so great to see you. Oh man, taking a picture. Harrison Ford. Everybody's done. Nobody's even. What just happened? Oh, Harrison Ford just took a breath down there, and they're all down there. So you got to understand that that's the way it works.
Right.
But I think among my friends, the guys I play poker with, maybe I'm. But then again, I play poker with some guys who are famous. So um, I don't know. I One thing I think for sure that I marvel at in my own life, because Joe and I were. This isn't exactly fame, but because Joe and I were so poor when we first got married. I mean, really poor. We couldn't afford paper towels. Um, that I got used to this other way of living, and it happened kind of fast. But I'm surprised that I don't wake up every morning just falling to my knees and kissing the floor and saying, thank God I'm in a warm apartment with no rats and we have plenty of food to eat and
Right.
it's okay. And
Right.
it's pleasant and it's beautiful and blah blah blah. So
Taylor Swift lives down the street, by the way.
yes, she lives. I can see her backyard from my window. She has a rooftop backyard. Yeah. You get used to things, and what you don't want to get used to, and this does have to do with the fame thing, is that you can start to think that I won't use the fecal metaphor, but you get used to thinking that you're just always right and that everything you say is deep and meaningful and worth saying. And um, I'm trying to be humble in my situation, not to get a big head about things. And I think that's pretty easy to do because there's lots of times when I get gunned down with glee by critics or whatever.
Right.
But that allows me to have the ground upon which to work with my fellow workers. And I love, love, love doing that. Jacob Anderson, An Interview with the Vampire, was such a pleasure to work with. Next season, I'll be working with Sam Reed, and he's an amazing, wonderful actor. And this goes on. I mean, working with the guys over at Chain Theater, I'm thrilled to be working with them. It's a different style of things because it's like they're almost a company. They know each other. It's more like working with Steppenwolf or something where
Right.
they know their skills. I've seen them all on stage, so now I can say, yeah, this makes sense that you would work on this particular play of mine. But I do like being part of something. I don't necessarily want to be the guy at the dinner table, and I am that guy, but expounding constantly because I'm just full of myself.
Well, it sounds like your love for community prevails,
Yes.
and the theater is 100% that, and it's wonderful when you're on a TV show that can feel like that too. And what's really great, to circle back, you're not a day player. You have your place, you have a chair with your own name on it, and you're a part of the thing. And you don't have to write it, but you can bring your writer's gifts to it and have those conversations. And how amazing that those Anne Rice novels, all these decades later, are finding a new audience who don't even know the source material was a book, probably.
Well,
Um,
I
it's
didn't
something,
mention our showrunner, Roland Jones, and it's amazing what he's done. And as a writer, I gotta under respect, the amount of energy and time and brains that has to go work, just sheer work to make these kind of
right?
things work. I don't know how he does it.
Are you back at, have you guys started filming season 3? You said this summer you start again?
Mhm.
Great. And so you get to do your play Humpty Dumpty at the Chain Theater in New York City, and then you get to know what you're doing this summer. And for any creative, knowing what's next is probably the best feeling in the world, to have that kind of security. Eric, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you
Thank you,
for
Anna.
just your incredible, incredible work and what you've brought to so many of us for so long now. I'm just so grateful for this conversation.
Namaste.
Namaste to you. And I will see your play, and hopefully you'll be there the night I do. That would be a thrill.
Cool.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.